I am an associated member of T3 Trading Group. All trades placed by Derrick are placed through T3 Trading Group. Position disclosure. Oh, got some more swings on the books. AMD, DKNG, FUBO. Couldn't keep too much DKNG. That was probably the worst of them. I don't know what to say. The call-outs, the team call-outs have been fire this week. Absolute fire every day. And if you look at the market, which obviously we'll do first here, the market's kind of been garbage this week. Little red dog retracement type candle today on the daily chart, right? 3 down days in a row, and then today we broke yesterday's low and came back up and closed above. But it's right into this equilibrium area. It's right in the space between the 8 and 21 EMA. It's right into all this price congestion. It's still below 436. So, generally I would consider the market here for this buys to still be bearish. But what I said in this morning's the Oldensmith overthrow. But what I said in this morning's morning meeting is the bulls need to come in and try to create a pivot today to see if they can wedge this market. The bears, they want October 7th to be another lower high here for the market that will work our way down to eventually create a lower low and keep us heading towards the 200-day, which is still rising. But the bears did what they needed to do today, at least so far. It's only one day here, but 3 down days in a row into today. We broke through yesterday's low. We came back up, and we closed in positive territory, right? The SPYs here closed up about 0.35%. Qs closed up 0.8%, and the IWM closed up 0.5%. So the NASDAQ was relatively strong compared to the IWM. Let's look at the Qs real quick. Yeah, Qs actually didn't even break yesterday's low, so that you had that relative strength in the Qs. That stemmed from the move here in the TLT. The CPI number, though, that came out this morning at 8:30 was a little wackadoo, and it almost kind of threw me off a little bit, because when CPI came out, the market came down, the TLT came down, the Qs for a hot second there looked like they were losing their relative strength. And that almost made me lose some of my conviction and some of my ideas. But then very quickly all that stuff kind of came back. I'll talk about our trading ideas in a second. And then, still nothing to talk about with the Russell. I think that the price action is looking a little bit productive, but it's still just in its big consolidation. So bulls did their job today, though it's only one day, to potentially start to build out a wedge pattern. And technically, for this market to go back from bearish to what I would consider neutral, we need these SPYs to get above 436. So we're pretty close to that. And I want these Qs above the space between 360 and 362.50. We're pretty close to that. IWM is also neutral. IWM needs to get above 225 in order to start looking more bullish. So definitely an interesting day, right? Because of the CPI number come out pre-market. We had Fed minutes come out today at 2 o'clock. That created a little bit of volatility. No new information there, though. They confirmed that they're still looking to do the tapering starting mid-November to mid-December, which is mid-November or mid-December, which is what the market is already expecting. And that's pretty much it as far as the market goes. We got earnings season starting basically today. We had JP Morgan come out pre-market. I didn't want to do anything with JP Morgan, though. I thought that the earnings report was decent. I guess the market didn't think it was decent enough. Thought it was okay. And JP Morgan was opening flat, so I didn't really feel like I had an advantage. Delta as well. The Delta numbers actually were decent, but they warned on the increase in gas prices. So the market didn't like that, sold it off. I didn't trade either of them. So what I was saying earlier when we first started the meeting, was today was Wednesday. So this week, if you're just looking at the SPYs or the Qs or the IWM, looks like it's really difficult price action, right? We don't really have too much as far as the trend anymore. We don't really have strong confirmation there. We're kind of in the middle of this range, right? There's no extension. We're right where the moving averages are, and today especially, we opened up flat, so we didn't even have the advantage of a gap. But with that said, once again today, the morning meeting call-outs were super on fire. I was looking at so AMD was the first new position I entered today. Worked out really well. I spoke about this pattern in the morning meeting today, that this kind of space like 107 to 107.50 is really important with AMD, but I thought that if the volume looks right at the open, that you could get a head start versus yesterday's high, which is 106.04. I ended up not even using that as my out. I ended up using the low of the day as the out, because this is the volume confirmation I'm talking about. This opening volume here is perfect. I mentioned this, I think, yesterday when we were looking at Tesla. I love when the second bar here is even higher volume than the first bar. The first bar of the day and the last bar of the day always naturally kind of have higher volume because they're settling the MOO and MOC orders to get the day started, market on open and market on close orders. And when you can have volume bars that are higher than the opening bar during the day, that's always significant. And even this opening candle today was relatively high volume compared to a typical opening candlestick. So AMD did all the right things. It broke out through its level right away. You could have been long initially versus yesterday's low or the opening low. I was able to buy stock. I bought stock at like 106.80 something, 83 maybe, and then I think 106.76, and it just beasted. Got extended, created a pivot low, new high, pivot low, new high. This also became a 15-minute low. And then kind of consolidated those gains for the rest of the day and closed pretty well. So AMD was solid. I got a good price on it. It's looking good here on the daily chart. So I kept some AMD. I did expect, and I was looking at AMD today specifically because I thought that tech could be relatively strong today, that the Qs could be strong compared to the IWM for the day based on what the TLT was doing. So that trade worked out pretty well. Some other call-outs from this morning's meeting that I got involved in were FUBO. FUBO, I had originally mentioned 2 days ago that I liked how this pattern was building out. I liked the inside day, and I traded it that day, and I made some money, but I didn't keep my position because the market closed weak, and I thought that this tail was a little bit too much. Then yesterday I did not trade it. It gave another great setup and showed good relative strength, right? The market sold off for basically 3 days in a row. Look what FUBO did, right? Held in really well, gave another great inside day, and kind of gave the reset up. So today I spoke about being long FUBO, same thing, versus yesterday's high or versus an opening low. I was a little late. I actually, like, you guys hear me say this a lot, and so usually I'm actually really good at execution. I like to consider myself to be really good at execution on trading. And when your trades don't work or they work a little bit and then fail, execution becomes really important, because having good execution can mean that a failed trade, you lose no money on it if you game planned it well and you had good execution, or if it's just a purely failed trade that you lose less money on it. My execution today was honestly really poor. That's because I was not paying attention to the clock when I was doing the morning meeting. It was 9:29, and I realized I was still doing the morning meeting. So I was a little bit slow on some of my executions, and luckily some of these stocks let me in a little bit. I really wanted to buy no worse than 9.25 on this. I was definitely late, and so because I was so late, I was never able to get really heavy in FUBO. Ended up paying it up even more than that. I got some stock on this pullback here into like this 26.50, 26.40 area. It's honestly, it's really bad execution. I should have, and should is like a 4-letter word in trading. There's no shouldas, there's no wouldas, and there's no couldas in trading. It's only what you did and what you didn't do. But if I was on point this morning, I really should, for lack of a better word, be able to be getting stock at a price of 26.20 or better on the break of this inside bar. Volume's not beautiful on the first candle, but same thing here. Look at the volume on the second candle, even stronger than the first one. But it's breaking the inside day. It's giving the daily chart pattern that I'm looking for. So had I been able to get the price that I would be able to get resulting from good execution, I would have been able to have a lot more size. So unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of size on this one. I still had enough to make a few bucks, got paid in it pretty decently, but this could have been like another real home run for me, getting in on this thing for 20 cents risk or so versus opening lows. Instead, I had to take less size, pay up more, and I did something in both FUBO and DKNG today, which is really not good, which is I'm in the position after my risk should already be covered. That's the definition of bad execution. And again, when the trades work out like they're supposed to, when they work perfectly, like FUBO did, then it doesn't really matter. You know, it's forgiving on having poor execution or being a little bit late on the trade. And this one worked just fine, so it didn't hurt me for doing it. But there's definitely a risk, and the same thing happened with DKNG. There's definitely a risk here where, you know, you're getting in late. I'm buying on this pullback. Buying on this pullback, I should have already been profitable in this name by that point. I should have already been in it, covered my risk, and been in a win-win situation. Instead, I'm initiating risk later and potentially putting myself in a bad spot. If this thing were to fail, I'd be losing money in a trade that I should be at least break even in. And that's something that would drive me crazy if it happened. But I really wanted this thing. I really like what this daily chart looks like. And a lot of these types of stocks have really been waking up and showing relative strength recently. And this is another one, and it gave good continuation today. So FUBO I got into. DKNG is the other one I was late on. We spoke about this DKNG in yesterday's afternoon meeting. Yesterday it got downgraded but failed to break down. I think that's a really positive sign. When a stock should go down and it doesn't, that's oftentimes a sign that it's actually going to be going up, right? So it got downgraded yesterday. This is a bearish consolidation pattern. Resistance is broadly the 50 area. Support's broadly the 48 area. This thing should have broke support yesterday, and it didn't. It actually was able to be green almost all day yesterday. Gave it inside day. So I spoke about buying DKNG at 49.90 today. Not even waiting for $50. Just the break of the inside day, getting an early start, provided the opening volume was good. And look, the daily volume here isn't actually great. The opening volume was decent though. Opening volume came in pretty strong. This is definitely the opening type of bar that you want. If you're buying the right price, if you're buying 49.90, your stop loss is 49.60. You're taking 30 cents worth of risk, but it gives you a 60-cent move just off the momentum off of that. That's beautiful. This move alone should mean, if you had good execution, which I did not, that your worst case scenario on this is that you're going to be break even on it. Or even making money. And that's with good execution. I missed it. I was late to even get started because I was late ending my morning meeting. I was managing some of my positions initially. I jumped into that AMD. I'm jumping into FUBO. Oh my God, I missed DKNG. So I ended up kind of bidding out into this, and I got filled. And I was even telling you guys who were already in it and making money, I was like, guys, just so you know, if they let me in, it lowers your probability of success. The very best trades, as a great rule, only give you one opportunity to be able to get stock. And I actually use this in my own trading, no offense. But when I execute something really well, and then like 10, 15 minutes later, I see like that brand new entry-level trader get some stock, I go, oh man, my trade's probably screwed. and no offense to that brand new entry-level trader, but you're not good yet, you're not fast yet, you're developing your skills, and I know that the best trades only give you one opportunity to get stock. And if I got that great price by timing it really well and entering really well, and now they're letting you in later, that's usually not a good sign for my trade. And that's kind of what happened here. This DKNG ended up being really disappointing, really disappointing. It gave no follow-through. Really couldn't hold that $50 area at all. The market initially, we could take a look at a 5-minute of the market. The IWM on the 5-minute was nutty this morning. But the market was, going against it, and that eventually caused this, was trying to build out like a bull wedge here with this inside 5, and then that pattern failed, and eventually that even broke opening lows here. So I got stopped out of some stock, and I had a little, like a smaller position that I was planning on actually giving a lot of room to, and kind of just to help me keep this on my radar. So I still did keep a kind of a smaller position on this than what I originally wanted. And this is like my only like real negative. Honestly, it's not even really negative. It's kind of flat. I was gonna say it's like my only real negative name on the day, but I'm down so small on it that I wouldn't even really consider that negative. I would consider it kind of flat for me. So those trades for the most part all fire, great opportunities. Another one that I did not get in, but I brought up in the morning meeting today, was one of my ideas and I missed it, was TLT. I like TLT today through 133. I think I was saying as the price. 133? Yeah, I think I was saying like 133 in TLT. And I missed this one. I did type it up. I didn't rush into it because I didn't love the volume. Wasn't really giving me the confirmation. But this break of 133 versus lows also turned out to be a really good trade. About 75 cents of risk or so on a $133 name that we know can move. Gave $6 worth of upside. Closed on highs. Just another really good one here. This TLT's looking a lot better. My game plan was buy through 133 for an initial move to 140. So today we got to above 136. It's a good start. I wouldn't be surprised at all if over the course of the next couple of days we're looking at TLT at 140. Another one that I did not get involved in but was decent, and Felipe was all over it, was this NIO. NIO, I've been looking at this thing for a few days in a row here. Kind of took it actually a little bit off my radar today, which may have been a mistake. This is another one. Felipe saw the opening volume. He was calling out that he was buying pretty early on. I don't think he even waited for 36. I think he was buying 35 and change versus lows. And then this thing got above 36 and it closed above 36. That's what you need. You need to close above 36. Not a beautiful looking candle, not fantastic looking volume on it, but I think it's a good start for NIO. And closing above 36 is a great start. We need this thing to clear 37, which is more resistance. And then you clear 37, I think you got a target of 39 to 41 kind of in this thing. So good first step here on NIO. Let's see if we can get some follow through. And this one's not gone. We still can have the opportunity to potentially get involved in this tomorrow. So that is that. So it's pretty much all I've got. I don't want to talk about BOX, but I feel like I gotta bring up BOX just briefly here. Some of you guys know I've been involved in this BOX for a while. It's a very different type of play than I've never been involved in a play like this really in my entire career. And SPACs were never even really a big thing until this year. So I've been sitting in this BOX for a while. BOX is the SPAC that's supposed to become WeWork. And the only reason I'm bringing it up at all today is because the vote is next week. I think it's Tuesday next week. And then assuming that the vote passes, Tuesday next week. Thursday next week, it's supposed to switch symbols into we. I watched the investor conference that it had last week, over the weekend, and I really liked what I heard. It kind of gave me even more conviction. So WeWork is set to go public basically at like a $9 billion valuation through the SPAC. It had originally attempted to go public at like a $56 billion valuation that failed when they had that horrible CEO. And if you guys remember back then, all I could talk about was how bad I wanted WeWork to go public at that price so I could short it to zero. I had more conviction in shorting WeWork at that time than like anything ever. And of course, it never made it to go public. So now it is set to go public, but the company is in a much better standing than it was at that point, and their business is totally changed because of COVID, and they got rid of that terrible CEO, and they have a really good CEO now. And it's also opening at a valuation that is, like again, $9 billion versus 56 billion or something like that. So at a huge discount compared to where it was. But it's SPACing, and these SPACs have definitely been a little bit nutty. One of the more recent ones I've been looking at is just this GWH. What can I type it? GWH. So these things can be a little bit scary because there has definitely been a pattern, and unfortunately, I don't have the price action on GWH prior to it switching to the company. It was a SPAC for a period of time, but the SPAC, the week before, it was like a week ago, went down to $7.25, and that's scary. Then the deal passed, and it was trading at $8 and I think $8.25 at one point, but I'm seeing a low here of $8.40. That's also scary. And then yesterday it ripped up to $29. So, I've got a position in this BOX. It's not a technical trade. It's a very different type of trade than I've ever been in. It's definitely speculative for sure. And part of me really wants to add to it, but I'm also just really concerned about how often we see these SPACs do exactly what that GWH did, which is trade down somewhere between like $7 and $8.50 coming into the event where they switch the stock over, and then it gets the really big rip. So I've got a decent sized position in it. I'm looking to add. I'm just trying to figure out how to add. My fear is, if it does that dip type thing that some of these do down to $8, $7.50, that I'll be too heavy, and a 25% down move with the size I have, especially if I add, could be really damaging to me. So I need to make sure that I can afford the risk properly if that happens, because I really do think that we're going to be seeing trading at $20. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, and I'm looking for a way to get bigger in this, but I'm looking for a way to do it responsibly, because I think that this thing, a lot of these SPACs, like I said, they trade down to $8 real quick for like a few days, and if this thing is $8 and I've got the size that I have plus potentially double what I have, I'll be in a lot of trouble for that day or two. It's not going to be a good day, and then also I wouldn't be able to buy. What I really want to be able to do is if this thing trades down to $8, then I want to like quadruple my position into the deal. But I have no idea how that's going to happen. Obviously, this thing has just been stuck at $10 because you have the algorithms there who don't know if the deal is actually going to get through or not, just kind of doing an arbitrage thing. And if the deal fails, then we'll see this thing at probably $9.60, $9.70, or whatever the cash value, minus the fees is going to be. So this is something that's on my radar. I'm not recommending that people get into it, but that it has been my thesis, that has been my thought process for it. And I know that people ask me about this thing sometimes because you see it in my disclosure, because I have to show my position. So just want to hold myself accountable for the thought process there. That is all I got. So happy to take a look at any questions that you guys have. Scrolling up in the VTF initially to about 4 a.m. here. 4 p.m. Chris is having a hard time hearing. Was anybody else having a hard time hearing? Doesn't look like it. No? Everybody else is good? Chris, you... Okay, cool. Strolling back up. Red Dog retracement. Don't tell Scott I started calling it Red Dog retracement. Zahor, Delta would have been a nice short from the get-go today after the earnings news. Yeah, it would have. I kind of took it off my radar because it was opening up down small, and I generally thought that the earnings report was pretty good, but guidance is more important than the report itself, and they kind of warned a little bit about gas prices. So that's what ended up hitting this thing to the downside. We definitely love how earnings names can be in play. Like if you look at the intraday on this, if you did focus on it, this is just great price action, right? Obviously the price action is to the downside, but it works its way lower and it trends down all day. That's really what we want from earnings names more than anything else, is for them to be the catalyst that leads to good price action. So it definitely could have been one that you focused on today. FUBO and DKNG were roughly at execution. Yeah, FUBO ended up working out, and DKNG was definitely tougher. Yeah, for sure, Mike. DKNG, FUBO, execution in general is so important. For a while in 2020 and part of 2021 here, we had a really forgiving market. You could have poor execution and so many things were working that you would still make money for yourself. That's not typical. Most of the time, execution matters. Most of the time, you're going to have some trades that work, some trades that fail, and a whole ton of trades are going to be right in the in-between. And on those trades that are in the in-between, it's the execution on those trades that are going to determine the degree of success or failure for your P&L. So execution is huge. generally I pride myself on being a good executor. Today, I really wasn't. I was just caught a little bit flat-footed when the market opened. Next here from Gabriel. That was what happened in February. You could enter late on trades, and oh yeah, for sure. Especially when the market was bubbling. You know, November, December, January, February. You could be late. Things were continuing. It was insane. But that's, you know, I've been saying this a lot. Like, in a lot of ways, I really do feel like the market topped in February. Of course, if you look at the SPYs were 390 and change or whatever, and then they continued their way to 450 over the course of the coming months. The IWM had its top in March, but you will find many stocks, especially all those momentum type plays, many speculative type names. The real speculative fervor of the market topped in February. And there was just a ton of companies that were bubbling all over the place at that time, and then their bubbles burst. That's what happens, and we said it. We said it at the time too. We said it that you know, those stocks were bubbles. Next here from Shane. Can you discuss how you are thinking about having offers out for AMD tomorrow? Can you discuss your selling game plan, assuming we have continuation? Will you load offers first thing in the morning? And if so, what levels are you looking at to sell? So Shane, I actually don't have a game plan for AMD to trade it very actively. I think as you guys are aware, I tend to do a lot of trading where I have, you know, core positions in stocks, and then I trade kind of very actively around that core position. You know, again, like in SoFi, right? You guys saw my dots in my execution dots in SoFi yesterday. Well, same thing here on SoFi. Even though SoFi is out of play today, it's way too extended in the daily chart to do anything new. I have a core position, and I'm going to continue to kind of, you know, trade around a little bit for cash flow on that type of stock. And that's what I do with a lot of my names. That's not my game plan with AMD. AMD, I plan on doing a pure trailing strategy at this point. The stock that I have now, the stock that I kept, I'm using today's low as my out, and then I'm looking to trail on a daily chart if we can get good continuation. And if it comes all the way down and it breaks today's low and it stops me out, it's going to be fine. I'm still going to make money. And if this becomes a initial break higher that leads to a break of this entire pattern that's now been building out for, you know, a couple of months here, and leads to continuation of trend, and it works its way back up into, you know, the low 120s, then I'm going to be there for it on my core position and just kind of continue to trail on the way up. So I'm doing AMD a little bit differently than I'm doing like a SoFi or, you know, some of the other names that I'm kind of involved in right now. So I'm not planning on taking anything else off on the way up. I'm 100% trailing. I'm also not really planning on adding on dips on this one either. It's just a pure trail of a core position for me on this one for my game plan. So no, that doesn't help you. It's an expensive stock. So part of maybe the difference on the game plan for me is the expense of the stock. Like, I like to do what I'm describing with the cash flow stuff on cheaper names, because I'm probably not going to have 10,000 shares of AMD. I can easily have 10,000 shares of SoFi. And again, that 10,000 shares of SoFi just gives me a lot more game planning flexibility than AMD. So that's the thought process there. I hope it helps at least a little bit. Next thing I'm seeing here is from Zahor. Can you please take a look at SGH? Sure can. Ooh, big day today for this one. This was earnings? I didn't notice that one on earnings. Smart Global. Somehow this one missed my radar. Let's take a look at the 5-minute here. So your daily chart, you can tell right away, $50 is a big level. So for me, when I'm trading earnings names, I like to combine the earnings report with daily levels. So this one, $50 is the big level. That's what I would be paying attention to. The 5-minute chart here. So again, I'd be looking at 50. It doesn't break 50 on this first bar. This first bar is kind of insane. I don't know this stock. I don't know what the liquidity looked like early on in the day, but this first bar is insane. trades from almost $50 down to $45.50 in one bar, then catches an inside 5 and up and trends higher for the rest of the day. I think a general rule with trading is to trading earnings is to trade them in the direction in which they're moving. This looks difficult to me because of its first bar, but really that first bar is just a price correction. It price corrects back down kind of to the ADMA and gives you an inside 5 and up. I do like inside bars for momentum trading on earnings names when they happen early on in the day. When it's like the second, third, fourth bar kind of thing after a big initial move. But usually I'm doing that in the direction in which it went. So usually it'd be like big green bar and then inside bar and then looking for continuation. The big red bar makes it a little bit trickier, but it is a pullback to equilibrium and then an inside and up. So again, as far as trading it goes, $50 is the big daily level. I'm probably not buying $50 at 11:05 because of the time of day. I don't do a lot of new entry at post 11 o'clock. But I actually do like this pattern for a trade because if you're able, so this is a negative momentum bar, right? So if you're able to negate this candle and you're breaking a daily level at the same time and you're not extended anymore, usually that actually does bode well for higher prices. So it's negating that bar. You really could have gotten involved in this SHG at 11:05 today and not dealt with any of this opening sloppiness. You also could have gotten involved in the break of the inside 5. But I honestly prefer this candle. I just don't like the time of day. Volume has died down generally a little bit at that point, which is normal for that time of day. But it still gives you kind of okay follow through for your risk, right? If you bought through 50, it'd be like 30 cents worth of risk. It's really not bad considering how this thing is moving. And it works its way up to, kind of 52 and change. So it's a pretty good risk reward there on an earnings name as it clears the level. But for whatever reason, this one wasn't on my radar at all today. Yes, that's SGH. Arrington WeWork has an office space in Medellin and a huge lease space in Tampa. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. They got to get their rate of use. It's not the right term. They got to be at 60% capacity, and then those numbers are going to start looking pretty good, I think, for WeWork. They have a plan to profitability, which kind of gets me excited. Because the old WeWork had a plan to bankruptcy. The new WeWork has a plan to profitability. Cool. Next thing I'm seeing here is from Holden. Holden likes Lulu and UPST long term, but I'm having trouble finding a good time to jump in. UPST just gave us an opportunity a couple days ago. We can take a look. I feel like I am missing out on gains, but they're so extended. Any advice? Yeah, for sure. We don't want to be FOMO traders, right? You can't just look at a stock going up and say to yourself, I should have been in it, because that's not necessarily true. We need to be entering stocks when we have a strategic advantage. Strategic advantage based on risk, reward, and probability of success through appropriate setups, right? And sure, as of the close today, UPST doesn't have that. It just had a couple big days in a row here. Stock's trading at 344.50 and the ADMA is at 320. And one of the things that we got to be very careful about doing is just because you made money doesn't necessarily mean you did a good job, and just because you lost money in trading doesn't necessarily mean that you did a bad job. And that's because we work in a game of probabilities. And that's one of the things that makes trading so difficult, especially for the newer trader, is you can do all of the right things trading and lose money. You can do all of the wrong things and make money trading. And if you've never traded before, all you know is your experiences. So if you do all the right things and you lose money, you think that those are the wrong things. If you do all of the wrong things and you make money, you think those are the right things. And it's the opposite, right? So, and this is very difficult for people to do, you have to judge the trade for the trade and not necessarily the result. The question is not, did this trade work or fail? The question is, if I take this trade 1,000 times, am I making money at the end of 1,000 times? And I would argue that if you, let's say tomorrow UPST opens up at 345 and you buy and you make money, I would argue that's a really bad job. There's no setup in this for tomorrow. It just had 2 big up days in a row. It's become extended by $25 on its daily chart. There was a setup here yesterday and 2 days ago, and we discussed it here in the VTF, right? This pattern, and I discussed that this thing could move as a secondary to SoFi, right? SoFi was our team call out on Monday on the 11th. UPST, we talked about, okay, had this amazing uptrend post earnings report, and there were possibilities to enter this on the way up here as well. Broke that trend, had a deeper pullback. This is probably actually more of like a weekly pullback. Let me take a look at the weekly real quick. I'm curious. Yep, look at that. This turns basically into like a weekly price correction, time correction, and letting this ADMA catch up. That's a good thing, right? This pivot here is now actually really important on the weekly chart. 323.59. Let's go back to the daily chart. So it gives you that kind of weekly pullback here, and then okay, fine, I'm still not buying off any of this, even though this is a decent looking doji here, and it pulls back to just a little bit below the 21 EMA. The setup reestablishes itself, I really think, in here. It's now working its way back up. It's showing you that it's not necessarily confirming a downtrend. Well, this is actually the key battleground, actually, because this day here, October 7th, could be a lower high for UPST if it breaks down. Or this could just be a blip in the radar on the way up to continue its pattern of higher highs and higher lows. And this inside candle, this next tighter rest over the course of these last couple of days here, and this inside candle, this is the candle that's going to signal your direction, right? So again, uptrend creates a high, has a technical pullback here, a little bit deeper than what you might like on a daily chart, but when you look at the weekly, you see it's just fine. Bounces back up. Is this a lower high, or is this setting you up for continuation? This here is your, I'm looking for a good word, but I got to expand my vocabulary. It's your keystone, if you will. Right? Is a keystone like the thing that holds up a cave or something like that, right? This is like your keystone bar almost, and it's this inside candle. And if this inside candle breaks up, then you're probably getting continuation of trend. If this inside candle breaks down, then your uptrend here is probably going to be broken, similar to what happened with the SPYs and the Qs earlier in September. And what happens? It kind of breaks up, and SoFi helps, I think. SoFi had the big day this day. It's interesting, actually, that UPST waited till the next day to have its bigger day. So here was your setup. It wasn't extended at all here because it's not extended even on the weekly chart because of this pullback. And you could have been long versus the low of October 8th looking for this upside continuation. That's your trade. If you missed it, it is what it is. You can't catch them all, right? Like I had a bunch of names on my radar today. I had DKNG, TLT, AMD, FUBO, NIO. TLT is arguably the best or second best of all of them, and I didn't capture that one because you can't catch them all, right? You're only human, so it's okay. But don't chase it. Don't have FOMO. It is what it is. You'll never capture every movement in every stock that's out there. So just wait for the setup to be able to come back to you, because if it's going to be a good one, it'll set up again and it'll give you kind of another entry. So that's UPST. Been looking at that one a lot myself. Lulu, someone brought this up, I think, in the morning meeting today, and I mentioned I didn't like the chart. I don't like all these negative Maribozus that have come in. I don't like how this thing is broken down. I don't like how this thing is not trending. It had a big day today, but I would argue that this big day is not making it extended, because it was extended yesterday to the downside, and today it just had a snapback day back into equilibrium. I think that the Lulu chart's very sloppy. I don't really have an interest in being involved in it. It's gone back and forth through $400 here so many times. Now it's just back in the moving averages. There's no trend. There's nothing going on with this thing. Let's just give it time, give it breathing room, and keep an eye on it, of course. And at some point, eventually, this thing will set up again. I just don't think the setup's there now, and I wouldn't hurt yourself at all. I don't see how you could have responsibly bought Lulu today and caught this move, to be honest. Unless there was some news or something that I missed. There was good volume. But without absent news that I may have missed, I don't see how you could have responsibly been involved in Lulu today. Again, It's not just looking at a stock going up and saying, oh my God, I should have been in it. That matters. It's about trading responsibly and putting yourself in the position to make consistent money over time. And I don't think if you were involved in Lulu today and you made money in it, unless, again, if there was a news catalyst that I missed, maybe that changes the picture a little bit. But barring that, I don't think it would have been responsible to make money in Lulu today. Aaron just giving me a bunch of symbols. Baba, yeah, man, I'm annoyed. I took a loss in Baba yesterday on a little bit of a trade here when the Jack Ma news was first announced, and it came back down and it failed, and today it continued. I love Alibaba. I think the chart looks great. Moving averages are catching up. It's worked its way around. I think that this is a value play. I know my value people might disagree with me on that, but what's it trading at, like 16x forward earnings versus like most of these other tech stocks that are established like this trading at 60x. There's so much to like here about this thing, and now it's potentially reversing that trend. This is barely even a lower high because it barely even pulled back, and this moving average is catching up to it. I think it looks great. I don't know about coming in and buying it tomorrow. I want to set up. I think if your time frame is big enough, you could just literally close your eyes and buy it, and eventually you're going to make money. But from a more trading perspective, I think we need to wait for a better setup in Alibaba at this point. But I do still really like it. AVTR. Vantor. I don't know what this is. I definitely don't like the chart. Stock broke down in a big way for whatever reason yesterday on volume. It looks like it was a news event after a bearish consolidation, so it's continuing its way lower. It gave an oversold bounce today. It has the capacity to bounce back to 39, but until and unless it can negate yesterday's candle, I want nothing to do with this to the long side, and this potentially could even set us up for a short setup over the course of the next few days on a little bit of a further bounce. So I want nothing to do with that. Space is another company that I absolutely hate. I'll tell you which space company I want to be long, and it's not Virgin Galactic, and it's not Blue Origin. I want to be long SpaceX, and I don't want to be long Tesla. I want to be long SpaceX. I think that the move in space is not space tourism. Space tourism is nice. It's cool. I support it. You know, I would be down to go into outer space. I really don't think that's a viable long-term business. You want to be in the business where you're getting the government contracts. You want to be doing like what Starlink is happening. You want to be doing the other space businesses that are out there where you're getting those NASA contracts, and those are all going to SpaceX. That's the company I want to be involved in. The executives of Virgin are selling their stock on every pop for good reason. Sure, this thing has the ability to have huge short squeezes in really short periods of time. So I'm not saying I wouldn't go long it necessarily. I will if a setup comes in, the volume comes in, the short squeeze comes in. I like making money, so it doesn't matter that I don't like the company. But this is not one I want to be involved in unless we're really seeing level breaks, volume commitment, option flow commitment, similar to what we saw back here. And again, this was a good trade for me to the short side. I was shorting this thing in the 50s up here, and caught this move down, and made $10 in it or whatever. So I don't think that the chart setup is here. I don't like the company. I have little interest in it. Ooh, we have an Aaron K and an Aaron M. Exciting. Aaron K asking about Saba. Yeah, Saba. People always are asking me about this one. I don't think I've ever traded it. Remember, a lot of people are asking me about this into this initial pullback, and I think some of you guys traded it successfully on this higher volume day. I don't think I've ever traded this stock. I don't really have too much of an opinion for you on it, and I honestly, because I haven't been involved in it, I don't even remember what the events were back here that destroyed it. From a technical perspective, it looks very looks, like there's nothing here for me. you don't really have a pattern here, right? It's just kind of a consolidation pattern. It's very wishy-washy. It's right in the moving averages. This might be one of those stocks that has the ability to have a short squeeze if the volume really comes in. Definitely has the ability to be a momentum name. We've seen that in the past. So, keep it on your radar for volume and option flow to come in. But otherwise, just purely looking at this and trading it on a day-to-day basis without a real catalyst coming in, I think there's easier money out there. There's better things that you can focus on. Mr. Fish asking about thoughts on SWN. I don't like that this got below the September 27th positive Maribozu that appeared to be on news. So I was able to negate that candle. It's usually a bad sign. Though it is above $5 right now as of today. These moving averages are curling down. I don't got much for you on this one. You kind of have a descending channel here, so maybe if this thing can start getting back above 540, or ideally this candle, this negative Maribozu of 548, if you get this thing back below 540 to 550, it starts looking interesting again. Below 540 to 550, I don't see anything here worth doing. Might as well flip a coin. Thank you for that, Pablo. Good idea. And Jew might hit 70 in February. Yeah, this just was along with many of these other names. It was just the peak of speculation. No sound with the YouTube link. Can anyone else confirm that? Oh, you're having no sound in here. Got it. Sometimes you have to restart your VTF. I restart my VTF every morning. If I don't restart my VTF every morning, it starts giving me problems. Let's do a little reload. Cool. Next here from Sebastian. Say you tried Peloton. Yeah, 87. So 87.50. We actually spoke about Peloton for 87.50. I think in the morning meeting today. Maybe we actually spoke about it in the afternoon meeting yesterday. So this was one of the ones that ended up not giving follow through. I like the idea here. I think breaking this 87.50 could be the catalyst that leads back to $90, $91. So I definitely like the idea here. It broke it right off the open. The first bar of the day has good confirming volume. And then I don't think your market weakness early on in the day helped, right? The market was pretty weak here up until the low it put in at 1010, right? Qs, IWM especially. We called out this king-queen bottom here in the IWM pretty well. This move was up as much as the NASDAQ, and then it was toast, and then it was up as much as the NASDAQ. It was kind of nuts. So you certainly didn't have your market helping you on this. But it was still, I think, a good trade. You're buying through 87.50 versus the opening low. You're taking on 40 cents worth of risk in Peloton. Honestly, this move here in and of itself is big enough for you to cover your risk. So my hope is similar to a DKNG. If you had good execution, if you bought the right price at the right time, there should be no way that you're losing money on it. And for me, I love when failed trades don't cost me any money, right? If all of my failed trades cost me no money, and I can just have one winner every once in a while, I'm doing pretty well. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here. So let me finish reading the rest of your question. So you tried it at 87.50. The daily chart looked nice. I totally agree. It gave a move to above 88, but it ended up failing. Can I give your thoughts and maybe say why it failed? Yeah, I have no idea why it failed. Again, maybe market. Market was, at the very least, market wasn't helping. And this has been a very weak stock, so we do got to keep that in mind. So I thought that the break of 87.50 could just give you a bigger, better retracement. And it ended up failing. But again, execution. Execution is key on all the in-between times. It's not a pure failure. It's not a pure success. This was in between. If you executed this well enough, if you had a good game plan, you shouldn't be losing money in it. Also see Chewy. Seems the opposite of SGH. Right, so SGH we looked at already. SGH was trading on earnings. Chewy did not have a news catalyst today. I do like this Chewy, though. Chewy had growth concerns, I think, on its last earnings report. I think that's what happened here in September, and that's led to a huge downtrend. But even with that downtrend, this thing's gone from $80 to $60. I like what the company does. I know I don't own any pets myself, but I know people who own pets, and a lot of them use and really like their service at Chewy. So I do pay attention to that stuff anecdotally. But it's just been grinding on this ADMA to the downside. Today's candle is interesting. We can review this again in tomorrow's morning meeting as a potential trade. You know what, I'll even write it down right now. I think you do have a potential trade here in Chewy above today's high for a long. The problem is you're buying right into the ADMA. So I normally don't like that. I want to have more extension. I want to have a volume increase. I want more of a bottoming signal. We don't have a bottoming signal. But these types of really beaten up speculative stocks, many of them have recently been turning around. So maybe Chewy's able to do it next as well. Maybe this inside day, if it breaks higher, breaks the ADMA, which breaks this ascending channel, which gives you a shorter time frame move, you know, over the course of a couple of days, back to, you know, $68 or so. And then if we can get that move back to 68, then we can kind of reassess to see if that retracement higher can become a reversal. So it's Chewy. The cash price of VXX is $10 because it's a SPAC, but it's less whatever fees. I don't think it'd be as bad as Josh just said, between 7 and 8. It looks like most of those things are settling like 940, 950, something like that after fees. So I really don't like SPACs for the most part. I think SPACs have a place and a time for certain companies, and I actually think that WeWork is a great company actually to SPAC, to use that as a catalyst to the public markets, just because of the negative reputation that they've garnered because of their awful previous CEO and the previous failure that they had to kind of go public. But the SPAC rate, that's another one that I was saying earlier this year, for people who remember. In the beginning of the year, I was like, the SPAC raise is a bubble. They created more SPACs than there were companies that were decent to be able to SPAC with. But I'll tell you what else is happening now in the SPAC market, which is actually making me like them a little bit more, is that a lot of these SPACs aren't getting off the ground anymore. They're not getting the funding. They're not getting the pipe funding, right? Because you don't just need the SPAC in order for these to come together. They need the pipe funding to go with it, and usually the pipe investors are more sophisticated. And a lot of the bad companies now that may have been able to get off the ground with their SPACs when the bubble was still around, like a LOTS or whatever, I think that a lot of those are starting to have a lot more difficulty kind of getting off the ground and utilizing the SPAC to be able to go public, unless they're actually more decent companies again. So, you know, it's interesting how the pendulum swings, right? It gets so extreme in one direction where you kind of have this bubble, and then a lot of times those people realize and it'll swing like way too far in the other direction, and then it kind of might eventually center itself. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing in SPACs, and I'm really kind of nervous and excited about VXX at the same time. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm going for a really big payday on that, which means I could have a really big loss. But I'm going for it on that one, which again is not advice for people to get involved in it. You know, do your own research. It's not a technical trade. It's a very different type of play. It's a type of play that I've never been involved in before. But if it works the way that I think it could, then it has the potential to be a really big payday for me. Natalie here, did you say we were feeling bullish or bearish? Have some shorts debating. So sure. Natalie missed the beginning of the meeting. SPYs are still bearish as long as they're below 436, but today was a conducive day for the bulls because it starts to build out a wedge as opposed to the downtrend. Very similar here with the Qs. Qs are still technically in bearish territory, but the bulls defended it pretty well. The IWM is still neutral. So I think that if you have that many shorts on, you probably want to have some longs as well to balance each other out. If you don't have longs on as well, then maybe you want to size down a little bit, or definitely make sure that you are, you know, respecting your stop losses on things if they're bouncing. Cool. Next here from Mr. Steve NYC. I love it. We got a Steve from Denver. We got a Steve from NYC. MTTR. Your thoughts on MTTR would be appreciated. Interesting product. Spatial data platform. Okay, cool. Yeah, someone has brought this name up in the past. Maybe it was you. I don't remember. I think this looks decent here. I like this kind of turnaround setup, right? Like, it had this move from like 14 to 24, and then it pulled back to, let's just call it 18. So the $6 pullback after a $10 up move, so a little bit greater than 50%, but that's still okay. And now it's trying to create a bigger picture, higher low. So it's just your retracement rules, right? And then it's building out this consolidation here. Let's get this consolidation to break up. I like how yesterday it kind of tailed down but still held. Let's get this thing above 20 on a closing basis, which it did today. Let's get it above 2050 on an absolute basis. I think it looks decent. And your ad here would be 2050 volume. Definitely want to see volume come in. Sachin here, thoughts on LRCX. I haven't looked at Lamb Research in a while. I don't really trade this name. It's a little bit expensive for me. I don't like this pattern in here. It's below some support levels that it had at 560. You do have more support here down at 500. I'm not loving this pattern. I think it's a buy on a break of 560. It's a short on a break of 540, and I like the short better than the long. Felipe, I would give you the middle finger, but it would be inappropriate. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea because everyone knows that I love you. Natalie asking about Moderna. Moderna is still a broken stock. Strong day today, but just back into the ADMA. I know there's chatter about the booster, which could be good for it. I thought it was trading at a ridiculous price to begin with, up at that $450, $500. I don't want to be long this stock right now. I would rather be short it than long it, but I don't want to be just shorting it here right now either. I want a better setup. So maybe short versus 340 or short versus 360 if it gives you a setup. Look at the Chewy Weekly from Gabriel. It looks better. Better, but still not great. This sell-off here is brutal. It's extended on the weekly, though. It needs to prove itself. I do, though, looking at this extension on the weekly, it also does further make me like the inside day and up that we discussed as possibly a trade for tomorrow. I didn't know that, Josh. That's really good information. Surprised. They already got so much. All right, gang. A little bit after 5 o'clock. Another awesome day for the team. Seriously. You guys rock. Market has been difficult these last 3 days, and our morning meeting call-outs for 3 days in a row have been fire. I've personally been crushing it this week. I hope you guys have too. I'll see everybody tomorrow, where we'll try to do it again. But don't get too happy with yourself. When you get too happy with yourself, it leads to bad things. All right, see everybody tomorrow. Have a good night.